Texas Christian University, or TCU if I may. Welcome to the big leagues. Welcome to a BCS conference. Welcome to the Big 12 Conference. The Horned Frogs have only lost 3 games in the past 3 seasons. And that includes last season in which they lost just 2. Both losses occurred early in the year, and then the Horned Frogs got hot, and that included a win at Boise State, which enabled them to win the Mountain West, and that win snapped a 7-year home winning streak for the Broncos. So TCU, 11-2, bowl winners. Again, another memorable season for Gary Patterson, who's just like Chris Peterson at Boise State, a coach who has done great things in his program, but yet had a chance to leave and go somewhere else and make even more money. But you get the feeling for Patterson, just like Peterson, they're content where they're at, and it's home for them. Entering this season, TCU is going to be a step up in competition, not just because of the level of play, but because you're facing quite a few teams who will be capable of beating you. TCU will still do good in this league, but they are not the favorites to win, even though they got quite a few skilled players coming back. Let's go ahead and begin the TCU report by talking about the offense. Casey Paha, 6 feet 5 inches tall, had to replace Andy Dalton last season, which was no easy task. But not only did he do well, but Paha actually broke a single-season school record for most yards passing with over 2,800. TCU's ground game, though, deserves just as much mention, with 3 running backs returning all gained over 700 yards on the ground a year ago. Ed Wesley, Wayman James, as well as Matt Tucker, all 3 are back. The wide receivers, many of them return as well for TCU. Man, they've got a lot of skilled players back. Brandon Carter, as well as Sky Dawson, and their leading receiver from a year ago, that's Josh Boyce, who came within an eyelash of a 1,000-yard receiving season. So you have those players back. But key number 1 to me for TCU is going to be how will the offensive line do, which has undergone some changes. Only 1 full-time returning starter from a year ago for TCU, and that is Blaise Foltz, who basically will be seen as the anchor of this line, even though he plays right guard. The other guard occupied by John Woolridge, and then the center, big shoes to fill for James Fry. And then you also have Teo Fabalugi at the left tackle, and at the other tackle, you have James Dunbar. There's potential there on the offensive line, but a lot of inexperienced. And it doesn't matter how good your skilled players are, including the quarterback, if your offensive line cannot be cohesive, they can't get the job done, then those skilled players are not going to put up the numbers that you would like. So for the offensive line, we're going to see if they can pick up from where previous TCU offensive lines have left off. And if so, then the TCU offense will adapt well to the Big 12. Otherwise, it could be a long year for those guys. Looking at the defense for TCU, this was an area that they digressed a little bit last year as opposed to previous seasons, in particular giving up passing yardage, which we'll talk about in a second. The rushing defense actually wasn't too shabby last year for the Horned Frogs, but they do lose some players up front from a defensive line that only gave up 7 rushing TDs in 2011. It does help to have defensive end Stanley Maponga back, and this is a league that is filled with terrific defensive ends. Maponga's one of them, had several tackles for loss last year, and then also had 9 quarterback sacks. But he's going to be seen by many offenses as TCU's primary pass rusher. So he's going to have some pressure on him. He's going to get more attention, maybe even double teams. That could be an opportunity for the other defensive end to emerge. That's one-time walk-on Ross Forrest. So Forrest from that other defensive end spot, we'll see if he can put up numbers close to or even better than Maponga, which is going to be a tall order. And the linebackers really bear watching for the Horned Frogs because they lose both Tank Carter, the All-American, and also Tanner Brock. Brock was a guy last year that had foot injury issues. Thought they were going to get him back this year, but as you might have heard during the offseason, TCU, this made national news, had a major marijuana issue. And quite a few students were expelled, and that included several football players, and unfortunately for TCU, Brock was one of them. Patterson showed no leniency whatsoever to anybody who was involved in that drug scandal. Brock kicked off the team and now tried to make his way at Texas El Paso. So TCU, which plays a 4-2-5 alignment, 2 linebackers, both linebackers will now be new starters. That's Derek Gilden as well as Kenny Kane. Key number 2, in my opinion, is going to be the play of the secondary, which last season in the 2 losses were downright horrible against both SMU and especially against Baylor, where the Horned Frogs gave up about half 100 to the Baylor Bears. One key player back in the secondary, though, one guy that really I didn't think did too bad of a job was Jason Barrett. He's back at the corner. But the other secondary players really have to step up, including the other corner, that's Kevin White, strong safety Sam Carter, weak safety Jonathan Anderson, and Elijah Olubode at a free safety. So talented, but they're young and inexperienced, and we'll see if Chad Glasgow, the one-time safeties coach for TCU, who was defensive coordinator last year at Texas Tech, but it didn't work out. We're going to see if his return to TCU at that safeties coach's position can help out. Special teams-wise, Horned Frogs have some replacements because they lose 4-year place kicker Ross Evans as well as punter Aaron Kelton. So new kicker will be Ryan DiNucci, and Gary Patterson will handle the punting chores. They lose a talented punt returner in Greg McCoy, who returned 2 kicks for touchdowns last year. So it looks like Wayman James and the receiver Brandon Carter will handle a lot of the return duties. So special teams, that could be an area where TCU has to prove themselves all over again. Look at the schedule for the Horned Frogs. It's really a tale of 2 halves. The first half looks rosy. Second half looks like a lot of thorns. First half, open up the year later than normal on September 8th when they'll play Grambling. And then they go to Kansas for the Big 12 opener. Should be 2-0. The next 2 games won't be as easy, but TCU should be favored in both. Talking about Virginia at home, a bowl team from a year ago. And then you go to SMU for the Battle of the Iron Skillet with the Mustangs, the Metroplex Showdown in Dallas, where you'll go against quarterback Garrett Gilbert and the Mustangs. Gilbert adapting to the run-and-shoot offense, but SMU has to replace that entire offensive line, so that could be favorable for TCU to start 4-0. Then the rest of the season, it's Big 12 games, including a home game against Iowa State, and then the rematch at Baylor in that thrilling game from a year ago. So it could be 6-0 or 5-1. Then hold on to your hats, Horned Frog fans, because the second half could get dicey. Games at home against Texas Tech the following week, and remember the Red Raiders love to throw, and TCU's weakness right now in defense is the secondary, so that may not match up well at all. And then at Oklahoma State and at West Virginia, back-to-back weeks. That's a double whammy right there. Then you host Kansas State, a 10-win team from a year ago. Bye week, and you'll need it because you play at Texas the following week in that terrific defense. Then you close out the year against Big 12 preseason favorite Oklahoma. That's the first Saturday of December. I foresee this being an 8-4 year for TCU. I think they've got quality players, and I do think that Gary Patterson has had something terrific going. And by the way, you can tell TCU is fired up about being in the Big 12. And also, too, their stadium getting a facelift. Amon Carter Stadium has recently undergone a $100 million plus renovation, more seats, brand new weight room. It's going to have a much more contemporary look in Fort Worth. So that's something also to look forward to if you're a Horned Frog fan. They've got quality players, but their offensive line they've had issues with, and also linebackers, and I have issues also with the secondary that needs to prove themselves all over again after having a year that wasn't their best. I foresee TCU, again, 8-4, going to a bowl game, and I see them finishing 5th in the Big 12. I think the second half of that schedule does not lay out well for them. So that's my look at the Horned Frogs, a new member of the Big 12 Conference. My next Big 12 preview, we're going to head to Ames, Iowa, and talk about the Iowa State Cyclones. See you next time.